Hey, good morning, everybody. Josh Smith, manager of the Land Resource Group at Soterra. It's really great that you're here. We're really happy that you're here. Today is probably the most important episode that we'll do for the remainder of our little campaign here. Today is all about trees. We're actually calling this episode Tree Talk. No matter how many interesting things that we do down here at Soterra, whether that be solar, whether that be carbon sequestration, whatever the case may be, it all revolves around trees. Trees are the foundation of Soterra. So I had a little problem whenever I decided to do this. I had a ton of options at Soterra to ask about trees and what goes into planting trees, what goes into harvesting trees. And I thought to myself, the only guy that I know that I would call when I had some kind of tree question is David Gill. David Gill is one of the most versatile employees that we have at Soterra, and he reminds me a little of Josie Wells, and I think that that's pretty cool. So sit back, enjoy this video or this episode on trees. Okay, good morning, everybody. Here we are. We're out on a recently planted piece of property, and I'm here with David Gill, one of my good friends at Soterra. Truly just one of the best employees that we have. David's been with the company for 11 and a half years. He has got a ton of forestry experience. He's going to walk us through pretty much the life cycle of a tree today. We're going to start at the very, very beginning. So one thing I wanted to mention as well is throughout the video, you're going to see different spots and different places because we want to illustrate how a tree goes from a seedling like this to a big giant tree. So, David, how are you?
I'm good. How are you doing?
Good. All right, so let's get started, David. You've got to show me the way here. Okay. Let's start at the very beginning. How did you get a place like this or a piece of property like this ready to be planted with trees?
Well, Josh, actually, it starts the minute that the harvest is completed and the loggers left and we've done all the closeout work. We began immediately on the planting stages for this to be planted, and it starts a year and a half, sometimes 2 years before it's actually planted. First thing we do after the harvest is we'll fly this with the drones, and then we'll send that information to our GIS vendor, and he'll create a shape file that exact acreage is, and you hear the word shape file in the forestry a little bit. Shape file is very, that shape file that's created, that will understand it's electrically, and all the information on that shape file determine the projects that are done on this. Okay. So this planning actually starts a year to 2 years before it's actually planted.
And so it goes from the ground really to a computer. Is a shape file, right? Is something that's exchanged between people all over the place, between contractors and foresters and things like that. So the computer does play a big role in planting.
That's correct. We'll send that shape file to the contractor that's going to do the planting.
Okay.
And before that, we send the shape file to the contractor that's going to do the site prep spray.
Okay.
And so there's no guesswork on the acreage.
Gotcha.
Because we have an exact acreage shape file.
And it's got to be that way.
That's right. And it'll be that for the life cycle for the next 30 years. So that's why when you create that shape file, it's very important because that's going to be what we use for the next 30 years.
Well, so tell me this. I mean, you hear all the time about Earth Week, Earth Month, and planting trees and how important that is. For Soterra, do we plant a variety of trees, or is there just one particular species that we deal in?
Well, we do look at each site individually.
Okay.
Primarily in this area, this region, it's going to be loblolly pine trees.
And they grow fast. Is that why?
That is one of the reasons.
Okay.
But there's multiple reasons because there's so many different soil types. So we examine all of that before we make the decision. What species?
Well, I've got to ask this because, throughout the year, we talk about what everybody does at Soterra throughout the year, but one of the busiest times, or at least from what I hear from you guys, is that planting season is just a free-for-all. It's very busy. So, and very hard too, from what I understand. So I guess the first question is what
when is planting season?
Planting season in this region starts the 1st of December and goes through the end of March, sometimes into April. It depends on the weather.
Okay.
But forestry, and especially planting of pine seedlings, is compared a lot to farmers who plant cotton or other crops.
Right.
Because in the same sense, that farmer has a narrow window to get his crop and seed in the ground, and it's the same way with forestry. We have a narrow window to get these seedlings into the ground to assure their survival.
Right.
So that narrow window, and when you have thousands of acres to plant each season, you plant from daylight to dark, 7 days a week until you get your crop in the ground.
Well, so that was going to be my next question, and you kind of already answered it. First is, it's pretty interesting to think about trees as a crop, but that's pretty applicable, right? I mean,
right.
So, and I guess you kind of alluded to it earlier, but what specifically makes it so difficult or so busy during planting season? I mean, you've already alluded to, you've got that small window. Are there anything else that makes it so busy and difficult?
Well, there's just a lot of moving parts.
Okay.
You got the nursery that grows the seedlings, and you have to get the transportation and get the seedling to us, and then we have handling and the taking care of the seedling, and then we have the contractor that we get the seedlings to, and then we make sure they get it in the ground properly. So there's a lot of moving parts.
Right. So, John, I don't know if you can do this, but if you can, zoom in down here on one of these seedlings. So, David, I guess my question is how old is this seedling? I mean, is there a way to know how old it is?
This seedling was put in the ground in February of 2023, but the seed at the nursery was actually placed in the ground in January of 2022.
Okay, so it is a long process. I get it. Okay, so David, you've got me thinking about survival now, and what you said earlier, and all these thoughts are coming through my head like a crop. You know, I'm starting to think about trees as a crop now. So, is there anything that you can do to ensure that this seedling doesn't die? Like, are there steps that you can take, like this vast piece of land that has all these trees? Is there anything you can do to keep it from dying?
Absolutely, Josh. Over the years, the forest industry and Soterra have developed a plan that will ensure the survival. And Soterra specifically has a Schedule B that has 18 points. And if there's two factors, there's the human factor, and then there's Mother Nature.
Right.
And we can't control Mother Nature, but we can control the human factor.
Well, that makes it easy.
Right. And we have 18 points that we follow. And if you follow those 18 points to the letter, we have eliminated all the human factors.
Okay.
And so, yes, there is something we can do to survive.
So let's just talk about nature for a minute, because you can't really control that. But some of the things that you'd have to worry about, I'm sure, are like frost.
Right.
Maybe. I don't know. You tell me. But we don't get a lot of snow down here.
Right.
So that's a good thing. But like, what are some of the things that could cause a seedling to die?
We do have some hard freezes
Right.
that will freeze the surface of the ground.
Right.
And that's one of our points in our 18 points. If the temperature gets below a certain degree,
Right.
we don't plant that day.
Oh, okay.
And if the temperature gets above a certain degree, we don't plant on that day.
Okay.
We may only can plant in the middle of the day when the temperature is correct
Right.
and the soil is not frozen.
Right.
Because if you put a seedling into frozen soil, it's not going to pack, and it's going to kill, the tree's not going to survive.
It's just it's interesting because, you know, when you say tree planting or when you say plant a tree, like the first thing I'm thinking is you just go plant the tree and then it just grows and everything's straight. But it's a whole lot harder than what people would tell you. And these guys like David, they monitor this stuff so well to ensure that there is a successful rate, I guess, which brings me to my next question. So there's always percentages come into everything. It hurts my brain sometimes when I hear all these percentages that get thrown around. So is there a certain rate or percentage, I guess you could say, that you would think is a successful plant? Like, I'll be more specific because I was kind of vague. So do you look out here and once this tree gets up to a certain point, is there a certain rate where you say, yes, that's a successful plant?
It varies a little bit, but if you had to throw a number out there, Josh, it would be about 85%
Okay.
survival. We naturally shoot for 100%.
Sure.
But when you plant several thousand acres and millions of seedlings,
Right.
there's no way you're going to get 100% survival, but that's what we shoot for.
Okay. And so let's go a little bit further into the future now. So you've got this seedling that we've already shown on camera. How long is it going to take for this tree? We're in 2023 right now. How long do you think it's going to take for this tree to grow to where someone's going to come start looking at it to prepare it for what its life cycle is going to be?
Well, we try to monitor a little along just to make sure there's nothing going wrong.
Right.
So we don't actually do anything specific to this seedling for 12 years, but we will monitor it to make sure there's no insects or if we have a drought,
And
we might monitor
You
it.
can tell those things even as they're little, like
Just by driving through the stand and doing a visual inspection. And at age 12, we actually take samples, like cruising. We'll take measurements, heights, diameters, and that information is loaded into our LRM system. And that information determines how we go forward on our next silviculture process.
And something, this is going to be a good plug. David did it before I could, but this is our first episode, right? Our next episode is going to be myself and another employee of Soterra going out to that 12-year-old range and actually cruising. Well, magically, the seedlings that we were just standing by have actually grown. So we're actually standing right beside the seedling that we were just standing by, right, David?
That's right.
Yeah, totally. That's how they grow over here in Mississippi. So, not really. I hope you didn't believe that. But, David, I guess my first question is how old are these trees?
These trees here, Josh, are 5 years old.
Okay, 5 years old. So, is there something that you can do with them? Would they make a product at this point?
Not really, Josh. No, these are just watching them grow right now at age 5. We just continue to monitor them, make sure there's no insects or...
Right. Okay. Well, so I guess how much older do they have to be in order for you to get something out of them? Like, let's say pulpwood, Greif's a big pulp producer and procurer and all that. So how much older would they get to get pulp?
These trees probably about 8 more years to
Okay.
age 13 or 14. It depends on the soil type.
Okay.
Some trees grow faster or slower than others,
Right.
but somewhere 13, 14, 15 years old.
And so are these the loblolly kind that you were talking about earlier?
That's right. These
Okay.
are loblollies.
All right, good deal. Well, magically, again, the trees we were just standing in front of have grown to these trees. So, David, how old are these trees?
These trees are 15-year-old.
Okay, well, same question. Like, is there anything you can do with these trees?
Yes, Josh. This stand is 15 years old. You can see the canopy has closed.
Right.
And they're starting to self-thin themselves. So this stand needs to have what we call a first thinning.
Okay.
It's scheduled this year to have a first thinning.
Right.
And that will take out about a third of the trees.
Okay.
And it will open up the canopy so that the 2/3 that we leave will shoot up and just take off growing.
That was going to be my next question is what happens after you do that? So I imagine once you do that thinning, like they just kind of explode, right? They start growing a whole lot.
They go to the sunlight.
And so like right now, once you do the thinning, so you do the thinning and then you're hauling it to a mill. These trees, what kind of product are they after you first thin them?
It's going to be 99% pulpwood. Sometimes, in certain cases, you might have a soft chip and pulp product that is a little more valuable, but usually it's just pulpwood in this stage.
And so what, like you said, you kind of alluded to it a little bit. You got pulpwood, that's the first one.
Right.
The youngest or the smallest one, I guess you could say. What's our next stage after that?
You would have a product, chip and pulp, then saw pulp, chip and saw logs.
Okay, and
Poles.
and saw logs and poles would be the end of the cycle, right?
That's right.
That's like your cream of the crop tree,
That's
right?
right.
Okay. Again, magically, that little seedling that we looked at earlier today has grown, and it has grown into this big, gigantic tree right here. So, David, tell me how old this tree is.
This tree is 28 years old, Josh.
Okay, and let's take it through the cycle. So we were at, what was it, 15
That's right.
earlier, and now it's grown up to be 30. What can we do with this tree?
This tree is big enough for small saw logs, and
Okay.
this particular tree is straight enough to be a pole, so that's the most valuable.
Cream of the crop,
Cream of
right?
the crop.
Okay, good deal. Well, and so now all we're waiting on now is for someone to come in and harvest, or we plan for the harvest.
That's
at this
correct.
point. Okay, so David, when I think of forestry, I always think of you. I kind of said that in my forestry or in my intro earlier before the video. So let's get a little bit into the personal side. I mean, obviously you care a lot about trees. You gotta care a lot about the forestry and Soterra as well. So what do you like about working for Soterra?
Well, Soterra is a great company to work for to start with.
Right.
They care about their employees,
Mhm.
but I love being outdoors.
Right.
And probably the main thing I like about working in the forestry industry is you're working with a renewable resource.
Right, okay.
Where other industries, the oil and the coal and other industries,
Right.
non-renewable.
Yeah.
The forest industry is totally renewable.
Right.
And
But you forgot one thing. You forgot that the most fun thing at Soterra is working with me.
well, I hadn't got to that yet.
Okay.
That was number 2.
Thank goodness. Okay.
But just knowing that I'm having a part in helping the environment
Right.
and helping wildlife,
Okay.
and forestry, the wildlife is more abundant now than ever
Right.
because of forest activities. And
So I guess to go into another question, like what do you think is the biggest misconception about forestry?
one thing that really gives me a headache
What sticks in your craw?
is the misinformation that the general public gets about the forest industry.
Like what?
Well, the average person thinks we're just scorching the earth
Right.
and deforesting
Putting everything
everything.
down. Yeah.
When in reality, for instance, the state of Alabama
Right.
in 1924, 99 years ago,
Okay.
they had about 20 million acres of commercial timberland.
Okay.
And today we have over 23
Right.
million acres. So we have 3 million more acres of timberland in Alabama than we did 99 years ago.
I would have never thought that. I would have thought
Yeah.
that like
The general public thinks
Yeah.
there's a lot less, when
Right.
actually we've done a fantastic job reforesting the South since
Yeah.
the cotton field days.
So let's get into what everybody wants to know. What I'm sure, as long as you've been doing this, you've seen some crazy things. You've been out there by yourself in the woods. What's one of the craziest stories you can give me?
Well, I could probably write a book on,
Right,
on
yeah.
wild stories
Right.
in almost 40 years of working in the woods.
Right.
But one of the maybe wild and funny was I was cruising timber one day,
Right.
and anytime you're in the woods, you're going to hear animals walking, flying. You're going
Right.
to run into some animals. So one day I was on a plot cruising timber,
Right.
and I heard an animal approaching. So I got real still.
Right.
And I was like, okay, is this going to be a deer or a
Right.
turkey, or is that a big squirrel coming
Right.
up? So I just stood real still, and I kept watching.
Right.
And about a 600-pound potbelly pig walks up.
Uh-huh.
And the potbelly, and I'm in shock. I'm like,
So we're not talking about a wild boar. We're talking
No,
about a
this-
potbelly pig.
this is a Vietnamese potbelly pig.
Right.
It's not natural to,
Right,
to
yeah.
where I'm at.
Right.
So I'm like, I'm not believing, it might as well have been a T-Rex.
Totally.
And so I don't know what to do. And then it starts running to me.
Right.
But then I start to run, but then I realize it's running to me like a
Like
lab
a
puppy.
like a friend.
Yeah, it's like it's glad to see me.
Right.
Like, So then I realized this was somebody's little pet.
Right.
Then it got big and they couldn't take care of it.
And they just let it go.
And they let it go in the wild.
And it's just been living high on the hog,
Yeah.
so to speak.
Well,
Yeah.
I don't know if it could take care of itself or not.
I got you. Well,
But the funny thing is, it followed me around all day. And when I went to leave at the end of the day, I had to jump in my truck and leave quick. And I look back and it's trying to follow me.
sad little potbelly pig.
That's right.
Did you feel bad about leaving it?
Yeah, but I didn't have room at the house for a
I
potbelly
hear you.
pig. So
I hear you. Well, let's shift gears a little bit into sustainability and something that's been very, very prevalent in our minds at Soterra. So when we talk about sustainability, we care about that a lot, so much so that we have increased our non-timber revenue up to a certain percentage so that we're getting the most out of the trees that we have. One of the big things in terms of sustainability that we've done in the past 2 years has been to get accreditation from Sustainable Forestry Initiatives, or SFI. So that is a huge process. It's not an easy task. There are 17 objectives that we have said that we are going to follow the SFI objectives. Last year, like I said, was our second year. We received an exceeds grade on our safety program within the SFI accreditation. So a big shout out to Martin Sweeney, who runs our SFI program, and John Lett, who runs our safety program. Look, we wanted to take you on a journey of a tree from planted to standing up like this one is standing right now. We want to thank you for joining us. I want to thank David Gill for driving all the way over to Mississippi from Alabama, showing me what the life cycle of a tree looks like. We hope you enjoyed it. Please stay tuned. We have the cruising video next that'll be coming out in a couple of weeks. So again, thank you. We hope you're well wherever you are, and please reach out if you have any questions. So thanks.